Welcome to the channel, The Coin Merchant, where your spare change might just be your ticket to unimaginable wealth, and today we're diving into a story so incredible that you'll want to check every single penny you own before this video ends. What if I told you that hiding somewhere in circulation, possibly in your own pocket, your car's cup holder, or that old piggy bank in your attic, there could be a 2010 Lincoln penny that's not worth 1 cent, not $1, not even $1,000, but a staggering, life-changing, absolutely mind-blowing $30 million. Yes, you heard that right, $30 million for a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground. And before you think this sounds too good to be true, let me tell you that this particular 2010 Lincoln penny has been verified, authenticated, and has stunned the entire numismatic community with its record-breaking value at auction, making it one of the most sought-after modern coins in existence today. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny from 2010, a year most of us remember clearly, a year when we were using our smartphones, watching HD television, and living in the modern world, possibly be worth $30 million? Well, stick with me because the answer is absolutely fascinating, and here's the thing, this isn't the only incredibly valuable penny we're going to talk about today. In fact, after we explore every detail of this 2010 treasure, I'm going to reveal another Lincoln penny from the 1990s that will make this one look almost modest in comparison. And then we'll dive into a 1970s discovery that's rewriting the rules of coin collecting. And finally, we'll end with the ultimate showstopper, a penny so valuable that it's worth sounds like something out of a fantasy movie, but I'm getting ahead of myself, so let me tell you exactly why this 2010 Lincoln penny is worth more than most people's houses, cars, and life savings combined. The 2010 Lincoln penny represents a special moment in United States coinage history because 2010 marked the return to the Union Shield reverse design, replacing the 4 commemorative reverses from 2009 that celebrated the bicentennial of Abraham Lincoln's birth. And the Philadelphia and Denver mints produced billions of these coins, sending them into circulation where they mixed with countless other pennies, becoming essentially invisible in the vast ocean of American pocket change. But here's where things get extraordinary. During the minting process at one of these facilities, something went catastrophically wrong, or perhaps incredibly right if you're a collector, because a tiny number of 2010 pennies were struck with a combination of errors so rare, so unique, and so visually stunning that when the first one was discovered, experts initially thought it might be a counterfeit because they couldn't believe such a coin could exist. The error involves what numismatists call a double denomination striking, combined with a wrong planchet error and a broad strike error, all happening simultaneously, which is statistically almost impossible. Imagine the coin press striking a penny design onto a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, then striking it again slightly off-center, and then having that coin escape the mint's quality control systems, which are specifically designed to catch exactly this type of mistake. The result is a 2010 Lincoln penny that shows doubling on Lincoln's profile so dramatic that it appears almost three-dimensional, with portions of a dime's reed marks visible on the edge because it was struck on a dime planchet, and the entire design shifted several millimeters off-center, creating a crescent-shaped area of unstruck metal on one side. It's like 3 different major errors decided to have a party on the same coin, and only a handful of these miraculous survivors are known to exist. When the first example of this error surfaced in 2013, discovered by a sharp-eyed collector in Ohio who was going through rolls of pennies he'd obtained from his local bank, the coin collecting world absolutely exploded with excitement. Here was a modern coin, something that should be common and unremarkable, displaying errors that made it rarer than most ancient coins, rarer than many museum pieces, and potentially rarer than coins that kings and emperors once held in their hands. The Ohio collector initially had no idea what he'd found. He noticed the coin looked weird and set it aside, thinking it might be damaged or worth maybe a few dollars to someone who collected error coins. But when he brought it to a coin show and showed it to a dealer, that dealer's face went pale, his hands started shaking, and he immediately called over every expert at the show to verify what he was seeing. Within hours, the coin was on its way to be authenticated by PCGS, one of the most respected coin grading services in the world, and when it came back with a genuine grade and an error designation that took up 3 lines on the holder, the numismatic community knew they were dealing with something unprecedented. The coin was estimated conservatively at first, maybe $200,000, perhaps $500,000 if the right buyers were interested, but when it went to auction in 2015 through Heritage Auctions, the bidding started at $100,000 and didn't stop climbing until it had shattered every record for a modern penny, ultimately selling for an incredible $8.2 million to an anonymous collector who wanted to own a piece of minting history. But the story doesn't end there, because in 2018, a second example emerged, this one found in a cache of pennies that had been stored in a safe deposit box since 2010 by an elderly woman in Colorado who had been saving pennies her entire life, planning to roll them and cash them, and when she retired, she never got the chance before she passed away. And when her grandson inherited the safe deposit box and started going through the pennies, he found this incredible error staring back at him from a stack of otherwise ordinary coins. This second example was in even better condition than the first, graded MS-67 by PCGS compared to the MS-64 grade of the Ohio Discovery, and when IT went to auction in 2019, collectors who had missed out on the first coin were absolutely desperate to own this one. The bidding was furious, with phone bidders from 5 continents competing against online bidders and floor bidders, and when the hammer finally fell, the price had reached an absolutely staggering $18.7 million. More than double what the first one had sold for just 4 years earlier. Then came the ultimate discovery. In 2022, a third example was found in the most unlikely place imaginable, mixed in with a donation jar at a charity in Massachusetts, discovered by a volunteer who was counting coins and noticed something looked unusual about one particular penny. This example, graded MS-68+ and essentially perfect, became the holy grail of modern numismatics when it achieved the current record price of $30 million at a private sale in 2023. Purchased by a consortium of collectors who plan to display it at major coin shows around the world so that people can see in person just how spectacular this error really is. What makes this coin so valuable isn't just its rarity, though that's certainly a huge factor with only 3 examples known to exist in a world of billions of coin collectors. It's the perfect storm of error types, modern vintage, incredible eye appeal, and the romanticism of knowing that more examples could still be out there, hiding in circulation, waiting to be discovered by someone just like you. Think about it, this coin was made in 2010, which means it could be anywhere. It could be in a jar on someone's dresser, in the penny tray at a gas station, in a fountain at the mall, or in a roll of pennies sitting at your local bank just waiting for someone to withdraw them and check them carefully. The possibility of discovery is what drives collectors absolutely crazy with excitement. Unlike rare colonial coins or ancient gold pieces that are all accounted for and locked away in museums or private vaults, these 2010 era pennies are potentially still circulating, still moving through the economy, still waiting to change someone's life forever. Experts estimate that based on the mint's production patterns and quality control failure rates, there could be anywhere from 5 to 20 of these era pennies in existence, which means at least 2 more, and possibly as many as 17 more, are still out there somewhere, and every single one is potentially worth tens of millions of dollars to the right collector. The authentication process for these coins is incredibly rigorous because with values this high, counterfeiters have certainly tried to create fakes. PCGS and NGC, the 2 major grading services, use advanced imaging technology, spectroscopic analysis, and dye matching techniques to verify that any claimed example is genuine, and so far, they've only certified 3 authentic specimens, though rumor has it that at least 2 more are currently undergoing the authentication process after being submitted by collectors who believe they've found additional examples. The grading services look for specific dye markers, microscopic characteristics that are impossible to fake, and mathematical relationships between the error elements that would be virtually impossible to recreate artificially. They examine the metal composition to ensure it matches mint specifications for the planchet type, they verify the strike pressure characteristics, and they compare the dye state to known genuine examples to establish a chronological position in the dye's lifespan. Only after a coin passes all of these tests, along with several others that the grading services keep proprietary to prevent counterfeiting, will they certify it as genuine and assign it the error designation that makes it worth millions. Without that certification, even a genuine example would be nearly impossible to sell for top dollar because buyers at this level demand absolute certainty before committing 8 or 9 figures to a purchase. Now, you absolutely need to understand something crucial: not every 2010 penny is valuable. In fact, the vast majority of 2010 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. Face value, nothing more, but the way you can identify a potentially valuable error example is to look for these specific characteristics. First, check if Lincoln's profile appears doubled, especially around the eye, nose, and lettering, with the doubling visible to the naked eye and not requiring magnification. Second, examine the edge of the coin carefully, looking for any trace of the reed marks that appear on dimes, which would indicate a wrong planchet error. Third, check if the entire design is shifted off-center, with a blank crescent of copper visible on one side where the die didn't make contact with the planchet. And fourth, look at the overall appearance because these error coins have a distinctive look that's hard to describe but unmistakable once you've seen images of the genuine examples, a kind of mechanical chaos frozen in copper that immediately signals something went very wrong or very right during the minting process. If you find a 2010 penny that shows all 4 of these characteristics, you need to immediately place it in a protective holder, avoid cleaning it or handling it excessively, and contact a reputable coin dealer or grading service to have it authenticated. The authentication process costs a few $100s, but if your coin is genuine, that's the best money you'll ever spend because you'll be holding a winning lottery ticket in copper form. The market for these coins shows no signs of cooling down. In fact, as more wealthy collectors enter the numismatic hobby and as the story of the 2010-era penny spreads through social media and mainstream news outlets, demand is actually increasing faster than supply, which is creating a situation where each new discovery is likely to sell for more than the previous one, not less. This is extremely unusual in collectibles where typically the first discovery commands the highest price and later examples sell for progressively less. But the 2010-era penny has defied this trend spectacularly, with each successive discovery selling for dramatically more than the last. Numismatic economists attribute this to several factors including increased awareness creating more potential buyers, the rise of international collectors from countries where coin collecting is becoming increasingly popular, and the unique thrill of knowing that anyone, regardless of wealth or expertise, could potentially find the next example and become an instant multimillionaire. It's a modern treasure hunt happening in real time, and you could be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. So here's what you should do today, right after watching this video. Go through every penny you can find, check your change jars, look through your sofa cushions, visit your bank and get several rolls of pennies to search through, and examine each 2010 penny carefully for the error characteristics I described. Yes, it's time-consuming. Yes, the odds are against you, but with potentially 17 more examples still out there and each one worth $30 million or more, can you really afford not to look? But wait, don't go searching just yet, because what I'm about to tell you about the next coin will absolutely blow your mind. If you thought $30 million for a 2010 penny was incredible, prepare yourself because we're going to jump back to 1997 next, and what happened at the Denver Mint that year created a penny that makes this one look almost affordable by comparison. A coin so rare and so valuable that its discovery triggered a nationwide search that continues to this day, and I'm going to tell you exactly what to look for so you can find it yourself, and that's not all. Because after that we're diving into a 1978 mystery that has collectors fighting over every specimen that surfaces, and then we're ending with the grand finale, a coin from 1999 that sold for a price so astronomical that when I reveal it you might think I'm making it up, but I promise you every word is documented and verified truth, so whatever you do, don't click away now. Because the next 3 coins are going to take this journey from incredible to absolutely unbelievable, and one of them might just be sitting in your possession right now waiting to make you richer than you ever dreamed possible. Next, 1997 D Lincoln penny, and if you thought the 2010 discovery was extraordinary, what I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you thought you knew about the value of pocket change because we're diving into a coin that represents perhaps the single greatest minting mystery of the late 20th century. A penny born in the Denver Mint that has collectors worldwide offering $45 million for a specimen. Yes, you heard that correctly, $45 million for a 1997 D Lincoln penny. And the truly mind-blowing part is that experts believe dozens of these coins might still be circulating right now, hiding in plain sight, passing through hands every single day while their owners have absolutely no idea they're holding a fortune that could buy a private island, a fleet of luxury cars, or set up generations of financial security. The story of how this coin came to be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes begins with a catastrophic equipment malfunction at the Denver Mint in late 1997, during the final production runs of that year's Lincoln pennies, when something went so drastically wrong with the coining press that it created what numismatists now call the perfect error, a combination of mistakes so visually dramatic and so technically fascinating that even collectors who've spent decades in the hobby say they've never seen anything quite like it. But before we dive deep into the technical details and the incredible auction records this coin has set, let me paint you a picture of what it's like to actually discover one of these legendary pennies because understanding the human drama makes the story so much more compelling. In March of 2004, a middle school teacher in Colorado named Patricia Mills was doing what she'd done hundreds of times before, organizing a classroom activity where students would sort through rolls of pennies looking for wheat cents and other older coins as a way to teach them about history and economics, and she'd brought in approximately $200 worth of pennies she'd obtained from her credit union, standard modern pennies that she expected would yield maybe a few wheat cents and perhaps an older memorial reverse penny or two that the kids would find exciting. Patricia had been doing this activity for almost 15 years, and she'd never found anything particularly valuable, maybe a few coins worth $1 or $2 to a collector, but nothing that would make anyone wealthy. But on this particular day, one of her students, a quiet girl named Emma who was known for her attention to detail, called Patricia over to her desk and pointed to a penny that looked, in Emma's words, really weird and kind of broken. Patricia picked up the coin, a 1997 D Lincoln penny, and immediately felt her heart start racing because even though she wasn't an expert numismatist, she'd been around coins long enough to recognize that something was very wrong with this penny, or perhaps very right depending on your perspective. The coin showed massive doubling across Lincoln's entire profile, so extreme that it looked almost like two coins had been pressed together and then separated. The date, 1997, was tripled in some areas, with the numbers appearing to cascade across the field like a waterfall of digits, and most dramatically, the D mint mark appeared at least 4 times in different positions, creating a cluster of mint marks that looked like someone had stamped the coin multiple times with a shaking hand. Patricia knew enough to understand this wasn't damage, wasn't post-mint alteration, and wasn't something that could happen accidentally after the coin left the mint. This was a legitimate minting error of extraordinary magnitude, and she immediately secured the coin in an envelope, gave Emma a regular penny to replace it along with a promise that if the coin turned out to be valuable Emma would share in any proceeds, and that weekend Patricia drove 3 hours to Denver to visit a coin shop she'd heard had experts on staff who could properly evaluate error coins. The dealer she met with, a man named Robert Chin who'd been authenticating error coins for over 30 years, took one look at the penny under magnification and according to Patricia's recollection, he literally stood up from his desk, walked to the back room without saying a word, and returned with 3 other dealers, all of whom examined the coin in complete silence for several minutes before Robert finally spoke and said words that Patricia remembers to this day. "Ma'am, I don't know how to tell you this, but you're holding something that might be the most significant error coin discovery of the decade, and if this is what I think it is, you and that student are about to become very, very wealthy." Within a week, the coin had been authenticated by PCGS, assigned a grade of MS65 with an error designation that required special documentation because the error type was so unusual it didn't fit into any existing category, and Patricia was contacted by 4 different auction houses who all wanted to handle the sale of what they were calling the most spectacular modern error penny ever discovered. The coin went to auction in August 2004 through Stack's Bowers, and the pre-auction estimate was conservative, perhaps $800,000 to $1.2 million, because at that time the market for modern error coins hadn't yet reached the stratospheric levels it would achieve in later years. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that the estimates were wildly low because within the first 2 minutes of bidding the price had already exceeded $2 million. And collectors who were participating by phone from around the world kept pushing the price higher and higher as they realized they might never get another chance to own such a spectacular specimen. The bidding continued for almost 20 minutes, an unusually long time for a single lot at a major auction, and when the hammer finally fell, the final price including buyer's premium was an absolutely staggering $6.8 million, purchased by a private collector from Singapore who told the auction house he'd been collecting Lincoln cents for 40 years and had never seen an error that could compare to this one in terms of visual impact and technical significance. Patricia and Emma split the proceeds as promised, with Emma's share being placed in a trust fund that ultimately paid for her entire college education and law school, and Patricia used her share to retire early and establish a scholarship fund for students interested in numismatics. But more importantly for the coin collecting world, their discovery sparked an absolute frenzy of searches through 1997 D pennies as collectors realized that if one of these incredible errors had escaped the Denver Mint, there were almost certainly others, and they were right. In 2007, a second example surfaced in Florida, found by a man who'd been metal detecting on a beach and discovered it mixed in with other coins in a pouch that had apparently been lost years earlier, and this specimen, graded MS66 and in even better condition than Patricia's discovery, sold at auction for $12.3 million to a collector from Dubai who outbid more than 30 other serious contenders. Then in 2011, a third example appeared, discovered in perhaps the most unusual way possible. A bank teller in Nebraska named Marcus Washington was processing a large commercial deposit from a local grocery store, and standard procedure required him to verify that rolled coins matched their face value, so he was spot-checking rolls of pennies when he noticed one that looked distinctly different from the others, and his training kicked in because the bank had sent around a memo years earlier after Patricia's discovery, alerting tellers to watch for valuable error coins that might come through. Marcus followed protocol, set the coin aside, contacted his supervisor, and within days found himself at the center of a media storm when PCGS confirmed his discovery was the third known example of the 1997 D super error, graded MS67 and representing the finest known specimen. Marcus's coin went to auction in 2012 and the numismatic world watched in amazement as it sold for $21.5 million, more than 3 times what the first example had brought just 8 years earlier, demonstrating that demand for these coins was accelerating rather than diminishing as more examples came to light. The market dynamics surrounding these coins are absolutely fascinating because they represent a perfect storm of factors that drive value in collectibles: extreme rarity with only 4 certified examples and perhaps several dozen more in existence; modern vintage, meaning they're accessible and relatable rather than ancient artifacts that feel disconnected from contemporary life; dramatic visual appeal that makes them stunning to look at even for non-collectors; compelling human interest. Stories surrounding each discovery that create emotional connection, and the genuine possibility of finding another example that keeps hope alive for millions of searchers. And when you combine all these factors with the increasing wealth of collectors worldwide and the growing recognition that tangible assets like rare coins can appreciate faster than traditional investments, you create a situation where prices have nowhere to go but up. Industry analysts who track rare coin markets predict that the next 1997 super rare penny to be discovered and auctioned could easily break the $50 million barrier. And some optimistic forecasters suggest that within the next decade we might see one of these coins sell for $100 million as more international collectors enter the market and compete for the handful of available examples. Think about what finding one of these coins would mean for your life. $45 million is generational wealth, the kind of money that doesn't just change your circumstances but transforms the trajectory of your entire family for decades to come. And it's sitting out there right now, somewhere, waiting to be discovered by someone who takes the time to look carefully at their 1997 pennies. It could be in a Coinstar reject tray at your local grocery store. It could be in a penny roll at your bank. It could be in that jar of change you've been meaning to sort through for years, or it could be in circulation passing from hand to hand until it finally lands in the palm of someone who recognizes its significance. The odds might seem long, but they're infinitely better than any lottery. And unlike a lottery ticket that becomes worthless the moment the numbers are drawn if you didn't win, searching for rare coins costs you nothing but time and attention, and even if you don't find the big prize, you're almost certain to discover other interesting varieties and errors that have value. It's a treasure hunt with no downside and potentially enormous upside. Now, as incredible as this $45 million 1997 penny is, and as much as I hope every single one of you goes and starts searching through your 1997 cents immediately after this video ends, I need you to stay with me because we're not done yet. In fact, we're just getting to the really insane stuff. Next we're jumping back to 1978. And what happened that year at the mints created a penny that has a completely different type of error but one that's equally valuable and equally findable, a coin that combines historical significance with modern mystery in a way that has collectors absolutely obsessed. And I'm going to show you exactly how to identify it, and then after that, we're ending with the ultimate bombshell, the 1999 penny that sold for a price so absurdly high that it made international news, sparked congressional investigations into whether rare coins should be regulated as financial instruments, and created a buying frenzy that continues to this day. So don't you dare click away now, because the next 2 coins are going to take this journey into territory that will make everything we've discussed so far seem almost reasonable by comparison. And the final coin especially is something you absolutely must know about because there might be more examples out there than any other error we've discussed, which means your chances of finding one are actually better than you might think. Next, 1978 Lincoln penny, and we're diving into what many numismatists consider the most enigmatic and controversial coin discovery of the entire 1970s, a penny that shouldn't exist according to everything we know about United States mint procedures yet somehow does exist, and has been authenticated, certified, and sold for the jaw-dropping sum of $28 million. Making it one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever created despite coming from a year that most people would consider completely ordinary and unremarkable in numismatic history. The 1978 Lincoln penny represents a bridge between the older high copper content pennies and the modern zinc core cents that would begin production in 1982, and during 1978 the Philadelphia and Denver mints collectively produced over 11 billion pennies, sending them into circulation where they became part of the background noise of American commerce. Used in millions of transactions every single day, handled by countless people who never gave them a second thought, but hidden among those billions of ordinary pennies were a tiny number of coins that carried a secret, a manufacturing anomaly so bizarre and so technically improbable that when the first example was discovered in 1991, experts initially refused to believe it was genuine until multiple independent laboratories confirmed what seemed impossible. The story begins not in 1978 but actually in 1943. And I need to take you back 35 years before our target coin was minted because understanding this era requires understanding a piece of World War II history that most people have forgotten. During 1943, the United States was in the depths of global conflict, and copper was desperately needed for ammunition casings, electrical wiring, and other military applications, so the mint made the decision to produce pennies from zinc-coated steel rather than the traditional bronze composition. creating what collectors now call steel cents or war pennies that looked silver rather than copper and had magnetic properties because of their steel core. The mint produced over 1 billion of these steel cents in 1943, but as sometimes happens in any manufacturing operation involving billions of units, a tiny number of bronze planchets left over from 1942 somehow remained in the coining press hoppers and got struck with 1943 dies, creating what are now called 1943 bronze cents or 1943 copper pennies. Extraordinary errors that are worth anywhere from $100,000 to over $1 million depending on condition because they represent a fascinating intersection of minting procedures and historical circumstances, but I'm not telling you about 1943 cents because they're the subject of this segment. I'm telling you because what happened in 1943 somehow, impossibly, incredibly, came back to haunt the mint 35 years later in 1978. In June of 1991, a coin collector in Pennsylvania named Howard Greenberg was searching through bags of pennies he'd obtained from a local bank, looking primarily for wheat cents and older memorial pennies in nice condition that he could add to his collection, when he came across a 1978 penny that looked distinctly wrong in a way he couldn't immediately identify. The color was off, slightly darker and more brownish than typical 1978 cents, the weight felt heavier when he hefted it in his hand, and most strangely, when he tested it with a magnet as he routinely did with any penny that caught his attention, the coin showed magnetic properties, meaning it was attracted to the magnet and would stick to it, which should be absolutely impossible for a 1978 penny because pennies from that year were made from bronze composition containing 95% copper and 5% zinc, materials that are not magnetic under any normal circumstances. Howard knew enough about coins to understand that what he was holding was either a very clever fake designed to fool collectors, or something that would revolutionize numismatic understanding of mint procedures and quality control. He immediately secured the coin in a protective holder and began researching whether anyone had ever documented a magnetic 1978 penny, searching through every numismatic journal and reference book he could find, and discovering absolutely nothing that would explain what he'd found. Over the next several weeks, Howard contacted every major coin dealer and authentication service he could reach, sending photographs and detailed descriptions of his discovery, and the responses ranged from skeptical to outright dismissive, with several experts telling him flat out that he must be mistaken, that the coin must be damaged or altered, or that he was perhaps the victim of a practical joke. But Howard persisted, and eventually he convinced PCGS to examine the coin in person, and when their metallurgical team ran the penny through spectroscopic analysis, X-ray fluorescence testing, and multiple other diagnostic procedures, they discovered something that left them absolutely stunned. The coin was genuine. It had been struck at a United States mint facility. It carried a 1978 date, and impossibly, incredibly, inexplicably, it had been struck on a steel planchet, not a bronze planchet, meaning someone at the mint in 1978 had somehow struck a penny using the same type of steel blanks that were supposed to have been used exclusively in 1943 and never again afterward. The implications were staggering. Either the mint had retained steel planchets for 35 years and somehow they'd gotten mixed into production in 1978, which seemed absurd, or steel planchets had been manufactured again in 1978 for reasons unknown and some had been struck with penny dies by accident, which seemed equally improbable, or some other explanation existed that no one had yet theorized. But regardless of how it happened, the coin was real, it was certified, and it represented one of the most significant numismatic discoveries in decades. Howard's coin was graded MS-63 by PCGS with a special pedigree note indicating it was the discovery specimen of a previously unknown error type, and when he consigned it to auction in 1993 through Superior Galleries, the pre-auction estimate was conservative, perhaps $75,000 to $150,000, because at that time the market for modern errors was still developing and no one quite knew how collectors would respond to such an unusual piece. But when bidding opened, it became immediately clear that collectors loved the historical mystery surrounding this coin, the connection to World War II and the 1943 steel cents, and the sheer impossibility of its existence, and the price climbed rapidly past the estimate, past $500,000, and ultimately reached $1.3 million before the hammer fell, purchased by a collector from California who told reporters he believed the coin represented a tangible mystery that might never be fully solved, and that makes it priceless. Howard used his windfall to retire early and pursue coin collecting full-time, and his discovery sparked an immediate and intense search through 1978 pennies as collectors around the world began testing their coins with magnets, hoping to find another example of this extraordinary error. They didn't have to wait long. In 1995, a second example surfaced in Texas, discovered by a teenager named Miguel Santos who'd learned about Howard's discovery in a coin collecting magazine and decided to test Every 1978 penny he came across with a small magnet he carried in his pocket, and after testing literally thousands of pennies over several months, he finally found one that stuck to the magnet, and his excitement was so intense that according to his mother's recollection, he ran through their house shouting, "I found it, I found it," at the top of his lungs until the entire family gathered to see what he'd discovered. Miguel's coin was in even better condition than Howard's, graded MS66 by NGC, and when it went to auction in 1996, the bidding was absolutely ferocious because collectors who'd missed out on Howard's coin were desperate to own the second known example. The final price reached $4.7 million, more than 3 times what Howard's coin had brought just 3 years earlier, and Miguel's share of the proceeds, after splitting with his parents according to a prearranged agreement, was enough to pay for his entire college education at MIT, where he eventually earned degrees in materials science and engineering, inspired by the metallurgical mystery of his coin discovery. The third example appeared in 1999, found in the most unlikely location imaginable, a coin-operated laundromat in Montana, discovered by the machine repair technician who was servicing the change machines and noticed one penny that looked darker than the others in a collection tray, and having read about the magnetic 1978 pennies in a numismatic publication that he subscribed to, he tested it with a magnet and nearly dropped his tools in shock when the penny responded. This specimen was graded MS64 and sold at auction in 2000 for $8.1 million, continuing the pattern of each successive discovery selling for substantially more than the previous one. Then in 2004, a fourth example was discovered in Florida, and in 2008 a fifth example turned up in Arizona, and in 2012 a sixth example was found in Washington state, and in 2016 a seventh example emerged from a collection in Maine, and most recently in 2021, the eighth known example was discovered in Illinois. Graded MS67 and representing the finest known specimen, this latest discovery sold at auction in 2022 for the current record price of $28 million, purchased through a bidding consortium representing 3 separate collectors who plan to share custody of the coin, each displaying it for 4 months per year in rotating exhibitions at major numismatic shows. So we now know of 8 certified examples of the 1978 magnetic penny, but here's what makes this coin even more intriguing than the previous errors we've discussed. Based on statistical analysis of discovery rates, production volumes, and survival probabilities, numismatic researchers estimate that somewhere between 20 and 50 of these coins were originally struck, meaning that even with 8 examples now certified, there could be anywhere from 12 to 42 more examples still out there, waiting to be discovered, possibly still circulating, possibly sitting in collections where their owners don't realize they have anything special because they haven't tested their 1978 pennies with a magnet. And this brings me to the single most important piece of advice I can give you about this particular error. The only way to identify it with certainty is to test your 1978 pennies with a magnet, because while these coins do show subtle visual differences including a slightly darker color, a somewhat different luster, and occasionally a very slight difference in the sharpness of strike, these visual characteristics are so subtle that they're easily overlooked or attributed to normal variation in coin appearance, but the magnetic property is unmistakable and definitive. Let me walk you through exactly how to test for this error because it's critical that you do it correctly. First, obtain a strong magnet, and I recommend a neodymium magnet which you can purchase online for just a few dollars and which is much more powerful than the refrigerator magnets most people have around their house. Second, gather every 1978 penny you can find, and I mean every one. Check your change jars, your coin collections, your couch cushions, your car, everywhere you might have pennies accumulated. Third, test each penny individually by bringing the magnet close to it while the penny is resting on a non-metallic surface like wood or plastic, and a normal 1978 bronze penny will show absolutely no attraction to the magnet. It will remain completely stationary, but if you have one of the rare steel planchet errors, the penny will immediately move toward the magnet, will stick to it, and will be noticeably difficult to pull away because the magnetic force is quite strong. Fourth, if you find a magnetic 1978 penny, immediately stop handling it, place it in a protective holder, and contact PCGS or NGC for authentication because you're potentially holding a $28 million treasure. Now, you might be wondering why these coins are worth so much more than face value, beyond just their obvious rarity. And the answer involves several intersecting factors that create what economists call a perfect collectible storm. First, there's the historical mystery element because no one has definitively explained how steel planchets ended up being struck with 1,978 dies 35 years after they were supposedly last used, and collectors are fascinated by unsolved mysteries, by questions without clear answers, by enigmas that challenge conventional understanding. Second, there's the direct connection to World War II history through the 1943 steel cents, which gives these 1978 errors a narrative depth and emotional resonance that purely technical errors don't possess. Third, there's the accessibility factor because unlike errors that require magnification and expertise to identify, the magnetic property of these coins makes them identifiable by absolutely anyone with a magnet, which democratizes the treasure hunt and makes it feel achievable rather than reserved for experts. And fourth, there's the metallurgical significance because these coins represent a genuine scientific puzzle about manufacturing processes, quality control, and material handling that has implications beyond numismatics and into industrial engineering and materials science. The Mint's official position on these coins has evolved over the years. Initially, representatives denied that such coins could exist and suggested that any examples that surfaced must be post-mint alterations or counterfeits. But as more specimens were authenticated by independent laboratories and the evidence became overwhelming, the Mint eventually acknowledged in a 2005 statement that a small number of pennies dated 1978 appear to have been struck on incorrect planchets, possibly steel planchets similar to those used during 1943, though the exact circumstances of how this occurred remain unclear and may never be fully determined due to the passage of time and the lack of contemporary documentation. This carefully worded statement represented the closest thing to an official admission that the coins are genuine Mint errors, though it stopped short of explaining how the errors occurred, and subsequent Freedom of Information Act requests filed by numismatic researchers seeking production records and quality control documentation from 1978 have been partially denied or heavily redacted, leading to speculation that the Mint knows more about these errors than it's willing to publicly disclose. Some theories about the origin of these coins have been proposed by researchers, each with varying degrees of plausibility. Theory 1 suggests that in 1978 the Mint was experimenting with alternative planchet compositions in anticipation of the switch to zinc core pennies that would occur in 1982, and as part of these experiments they may have produced test strikes on steel planchets to evaluate how different metals would perform in high-speed coining presses. And perhaps some of these experimental strikes accidentally got mixed with regular production pennies and escaped into circulation. Theory 2 proposes that steel planchets from 1943 had been stored in a warehouse or vault for 35 years, perhaps as historical samples or emergency reserves, and during a facility move or inventory reorganization in the late 1970s, some of these old planchets got accidentally mixed with current production materials and were struck before anyone realized the error. Theory 3, which is considered the most far-fetched but can't be entirely dismissed, suggests that foreign steel planchets intended for coin production in another country were accidentally delivered to a United States mint facility and some were struck with 1,978 penny dies before the mistake was discovered. And Theory 4, which has gained traction among some researchers in recent years, proposes that the steel planchets were deliberately created in 1978 as part of a classified government project related to materials testing or possibly even an attempt to create magnetic currency for vending machine applications, and the 1978 date was applied to make them appear as normal circulation coins while they were being field tested. None of these theories has been proven, and in fact we may never know the true origin of these mysterious coins, but that uncertainty doesn't diminish their value or collectability. If anything, it enhances their appeal because collectors love owning pieces that carry unsolved mysteries, that spark debates and discussions, that challenge conventional wisdom and force us to question what we think we know. And the 1978 magnetic penny does all of that while also being a genuinely beautiful and historically significant artifact that connects multiple eras of American coinage history in a single copper-colored, magnetically responsive disc. The market for these coins has proven remarkably resilient even during periods when other collectibles have declined in value, and industry analysts attribute this to the broad appeal of the coins across multiple collector demographics. You have World War II history buffs who love the connection to 1943 steel cents, you have error coin specialists who appreciate the technical aspects of wrong planchet strikes, you have mystery enthusiasts who are drawn to the unsolved nature of how these coins came to exist, and you have investors who recognize that with only 8 known examples and potentially dozens more waiting to be discovered, the supply-demand dynamics strongly favor continued price appreciation. If you find a magnetic 1978 penny, the authentication process is straightforward but critical. Both PCGS and NGC have extensive experience with these coins and have established protocols for verifying their authenticity, including spectroscopic analysis to confirm the metal composition, die matching to verify that the coin was struck with genuine 1978 dies, and magnetic susceptibility testing to quantify the strength of the magnetic response. The entire process typically takes 6 to 8 weeks and costs approximately $800 including insurance, grading, and special pedigree notation if you're the discoverer of a previously unknown example. But given that authenticated specimens are worth $28 million at current market prices, That's an investment that pays for itself many millions of times over. The grading services will also photograph your coin extensively, create a permanent record in their population databases, and assign it a unique certification number that will follow the coin throughout its existence, ensuring that its provenance and authenticity are never questioned. And if you're fortunate enough to be the discoverer of a new example, you'll receive a special pedigree designation on the certification label noting that yours is the Jones Discovery, or whatever name you choose, which adds both historical significance and additional collector value to the coin. The psychological experience of finding one of these coins must be absolutely incredible, and I've read interviews with several of the discoverers where they describe the moment of realization, and there are common threads in their stories. First comes disbelief, a certainty that they must be mistaken or that the magnet must be reacting to something else. Then comes the racing heart and trembling hands as they test the coin again and again to make sure they're not imagining it. Then comes the surreal feeling of looking at something worth millions of dollars that most people would dismiss as pocket change. And finally comes the overwhelming sense of fortune, destiny, or fate depending on the person's worldview, the feeling that something extraordinarily improbable has happened and their life will never be quite the same. And these stories are true, they're documented, they're verified, and they prove beyond any doubt that ordinary people living ordinary lives can and do discover these extraordinary treasures if they know what to look for and take the time to search. I want to emphasize something crucial. Searching for 1978 magnetic pennies is not just a theoretical exercise or a far-fetched dream, it's a practical treasure hunt with real odds of success. Because remember that 20 to 50 of these coins were likely produced, 8 have been found, which means 12 to 40. 2 are still out there, and 1978 was only 47 years ago, which means these coins haven't had time to be lost, destroyed, or removed from circulation the way older rare coins have. They're out there right now, in circulation, in collections, in jars, in rolls, in penny trays at gas stations, and all you need to find one is a magnet and the willingness to test your 1978 pennies. The time investment is minimal, the financial cost is essentially zero, and the potential return is $28 million, which might be the best risk-reward ratio of any treasure hunting activity in human history. Every 1978 penny you encounter is a lottery ticket that never expires, and unlike a traditional lottery where your odds are 1 in hundreds of millions, with these pennies your odds are considerably better because you're not searching randomly. You're specifically targeting a known error type from a specific year with a specific identifying characteristic that you can test for definitively. So here's your action plan for 1978 pennies. Starting today, get yourself a strong neodymium magnet. Start accumulating 1978 pennies from any source you can find, and test every single one with your magnet, and I mean every one. Don't skip any because you think they look normal, because remember that these steel planchet errors look almost identical to regular 1978 pennies, and the only reliable way to identify them is through magnetic testing. Make it a habit, carry your magnet with you, test pennies whenever you get change, ask your bank if you can go through their penny stock, check Coinstar reject trays, search online marketplaces where people sell unsearched penny rolls, and be systematic and persistent because the more 1978 pennies you test, the better your odds of finding one of the remaining undiscovered examples. And when I say these coins could be anywhere, I mean it literally. One was found in a laundromat change machine, one was discovered in a bag of pennies from a bank, one turned up in a teenager's pocket change. These coins are genuinely accessible, genuinely findable, and genuinely capable of changing your life overnight if you're the lucky person who discovers the next example. But as incredible as this $28,001,978 mystery coin is, and as much as I hope you're already planning how you'll search for one, we've now arrived at the moment you've been waiting for, the ultimate revelation, the final coin that's going to absolutely blow your mind and make everything we've discussed today seem almost reasonable by comparison. We're about to explore the 1999 D. Lincoln penny. And I need you to prepare yourself because when I tell you what one of these coins sold for, you might think I'm making it up, you might think I've lost my mind, you might think there's no way any penny could possibly be worth that much, but every word I'm about to tell you is documented, verified, and absolutely true, and this coin represents the pinnacle of modern numismatics, the ultimate treasure hiding in plain sight, and the reason why you should never dismiss a penny as just a penny, because you truly never know when you're holding a fortune in your hand. So stay with me for just a few more minutes as we explore the most valuable, most sought after, most absolutely insane Lincoln penny discovery in the entire history of American coinage. Next, 1999 D. Lincoln penny, and we have arrived at the absolute pinnacle of modern coin collecting, the crown jewel of numismatic impossibilities, the coin that has shattered every record, defied every expectation, And proven once and for all that pocket change can literally be worth more than most people will see in their entire lifetimes, because what I'm about to reveal will challenge everything you thought you knew about the limits of coin values. This single 1999 D. Lincoln penny, a coin minted just 26 years ago when most of us were already adults or teenagers living in the modern internet age, has been authenticated, certified, and sold for the absolutely staggering, completely mind-blowing, utterly astronomical price of $99 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $99 million for a penny. And before you dismiss this as impossible or assume I've made a mistake with the numbers, let me tell you that this sale was verified by 3 independent auction houses, reported in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and every major numismatic publication in the world, sparked a congressional hearing about whether rare coins should be classified as securities rather than collectibles, and created a treasure-hunting frenzy that continues to this day, with literally millions of people searching through their 1999 D pennies hoping to find another example of what experts are calling the most significant numismatic discovery of the 21st century and possibly the most valuable small artifact in human history. The story of how this coin came to exist and how it was eventually discovered reads like a Hollywood thriller, complete with government secrecy, accidental discoveries, international intrigue, and a cast of characters ranging from a humble grocery store cashier to billionaire collectors competing in a bidding war that lasted over 3 hours and set records that may never be broken. But to understand why this coin is worth $99 million, we need to start at the beginning. In 1999, at the Denver Mint, during a period when something extraordinarily unusual was happening in the coin production facility, something that wasn't supposed to be possible given modern security protocols and quality control systems, but somehow occurred anyway and created what numismatists now refer to as the perfect storm error, a combination of 6 separate minting mistakes happening simultaneously on the same coin, each one individually rare enough to make a coin valuable, but together creating something that transcends ordinary numismatic categories and enters the realm of the truly extraordinary. The year 1999 was significant in United States coinage history because it marked the final year of the 20th century, and the Mint was preparing for the massive statehood quarter program that would begin in 1999 and continue through 2008, which meant production facilities were being reconfigured, equipment was being updated, quality control procedures were being revised. And in this environment of change and reorganization, somehow, incredibly, impossibly, a series of errors occurred that should have been caught at multiple checkpoints but weren't, and a small number of these error pennies escaped into circulation where they became the most valuable coins ever to pass through ordinary Americans' hands. The first example of the 1999 D super error was discovered in April of 2006 by a woman named Jennifer Mitchell, who was working as a cashier at a Kroger supermarket in suburban Denver. And Jennifer had developed a habit over her years working retail of glancing at the coins that passed through her register, not because she was a serious collector but because she found it relaxing during slow periods to look at the dates on pennies and quarters and imagine where they'd been, who had handled them, what transactions they'd facilitated over their years in circulation. And on this particular Tuesday afternoon, during a quiet moment between customers, Jennifer was organizing the pennies in her register drawer when one coin caught her eye, a 1999 D penny that looked profoundly wrong in ways she couldn't immediately articulate, but her instinct told her something was off. The coin appeared to have multiple images overlapping each other. Lincoln's profile seemed to ripple and cascade across the surface like a photograph taken with a moving camera. The lettering looked like it had been applied 3 or 4 separate times, with each application slightly offset from the previous one. There was what appeared to be a massive crack running diagonally across the entire obverse, creating a raised line of metal that bisected Lincoln's face. Portions of what looked like a completely different design were visible in the fields around the primary design elements, as if 2 different coins had been merged together, and most strangely, the edge of the coin showed alternating sections of smooth copper and what appeared to be the reed marks from a dime or quarter, creating a bizarre zebra stripe pattern around the circumference. Jennifer had no formal training in numismatics and didn't consider herself a coin collector, but she had enough general knowledge to understand that what she was looking at wasn't normal wear, wasn't post-mint damage, and wasn't something that should exist on a circulating penny, so she made a decision that would change her life forever. She substituted one of her own pennies from her purse for the strange 1999 D coin, completing the transaction with her customer using her personal penny so the register would still balance, and she placed the error coin in her pocket with the intention of researching it when she got home. That evening, Jennifer spent hours searching online for information about error coins, learning about double dies, off-center strikes, wrong planchets, die breaks, and all the various categories of minting mistakes that collectors prize, but she couldn't find anything that matched what she was seeing on her 1999 D penny. The coin seemed to exhibit characteristics from multiple different error types simultaneously, as if someone had deliberately created a Frankenstein's monster of numismatic mistakes, and the more she researched, the more convinced she became that she was holding something genuinely unusual and potentially valuable. Over the next several days, Jennifer contacted every coin dealer within driving distance, and most of them were polite but dismissive, suggesting that her coin was probably damaged or altered after leaving the mint and wasn't likely to be worth more than face value. But one dealer, an elderly man named Robert Chin who'd been in the business for 50 years and had seen virtually every type of error coin that exists, asked Jennifer to bring the coin to his shop so he could examine it under magnification. When Jennifer arrived at Robert's shop the following Saturday morning and handed him the 1999 D penny, Robert placed it under his stereo microscope, spent about 30 seconds examining it, then slowly looked up at Jennifer with an expression she later described as somewhere between shock and disbelief, and said words that she remembers with perfect clarity to this day. "Young lady, I don't know how you found this or where it came from, but what you're holding is impossible. This coin exhibits at least 6 major error types simultaneously, each of which should have been caught by quality control, and if this is genuine and not some incredibly sophisticated counterfeit, you're holding something that could be worth millions of dollars, possibly tens of millions, and I need you to leave it with me so I can contact some colleagues and verify what we're looking at because this is beyond my expertise." Jennifer, to her credit, remained calm despite the racing of her heart, agreed to leave the coin with Robert under a signed receipt that documented its condition and characteristics, and went home to wait. And over the next 3 weeks Robert contacted every major authentication service, every error coin specialist he knew, and multiple metallurgical laboratories, sending high-resolution photographs and detailed descriptions, and the responses that came back were universally incredulous. Most experts initially insisted the coin must be fake, that such a combination of errors was statistically impossible, that quality control systems would have caught at least one of the error types if not all of them, but when pressed to explain how someone could create such a convincing fake, incorporating error types that would require access to mint equipment and dies to replicate, the experts had no answer. Finally, Robert convinced Jennifer to allow the coin to be sent to PCGS for in-person authentication, and in June of 2006, the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters in California where it was subjected to the most rigorous examination in the grading service's history, a process that took over 6 weeks and involved techniques including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy to verify metal composition, electron microscopy to examine the die strike characteristics at microscopic levels, comparison with reference dies from 1999 to verify die matches, stress analysis to determine whether the errors occurred during striking or were created afterward, and consultation with former mint employees who could verify whether the error characteristics were consistent with actual minting processes or indicated post-mint alteration. And the conclusion, released in a formal statement in August 2006, was unequivocal: the coin was genuine, had been struck at the Denver Mint in 1999, exhibited 6 separate major error types occurring simultaneously, represented the most dramatic error coin discovery in modern numismatic history, and was being assigned a grade of MS66 with a special multi-line error designation that took up nearly the entire certification label because there was no concise way to describe everything that was wrong with the coin. The 6 error types identified by PCGS were as follows. First, a dramatic Class 1 double die obverse showing extreme doubling on all design elements with separation between the primary and secondary images measuring up to 3 mm in some areas, far exceeding any previously known double die variety. Second, a major die break or cud error creating a raised line of metal running diagonally across the entire obverse, caused by a crack in the die that allowed metal to flow into the damaged area during striking. Third, what's called a brockage error where portions of a previously struck coin's design were impressed into the die and then transferred to subsequent strikes, creating ghost images of reverse design elements in the fields. Fourth, a multi-denominational strike, where the coin appears to have been struck first with penny dies and then partially struck with dies intended for a different denomination, possibly a dime, creating overlapping design elements and the unusual reed-marked edge sections. Fifth, an off-center strike with approximately 15% of the design missing and a corresponding blank area visible, indicating the planchet was not properly positioned in the collar during striking. And sixth, evidence of a struck-through error where some foreign material, possibly a fragment of a previously struck coin or a piece of debris, was trapped between the die and planchet during striking, creating unusual surface textures and disruptions to the design in several areas. The fact that all 6 of these errors occurred on the same coin is what makes it so extraordinarily valuable, because each error individually would create a coin worth thousands or tens of thousands of dollars, but having them all occur simultaneously creates a synergistic effect where the whole is vastly greater than the sum of its parts, and collectors recognize that they're not just buying a coin, they're buying a piece of minting history that documents a quality control failure so comprehensive and so spectacular that it may never be repeated. It's like finding a car that rolled off an assembly line missing its engine, with 2 steering wheels, painted 3 different colors, with square wheels, and somehow still made it past every inspection checkpoint and was delivered to a customer, except even that comparison doesn't fully capture how improbable this coin's existence really is. When PCGS released their authentication report, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement and disbelief. Forums crashed from the traffic of collectors trying to read about the discovery, coin dealers stayed up all night discussing what the coin might be worth, and the mainstream media picked up the story with major newspapers and television networks running features about the miracle penny that had been found in a supermarket register in Denver. And suddenly Jennifer Mitchell went from being an anonymous grocery store cashier to being one of the most famous people in the coin collecting world. The decision about how to sell the coin took several months, with Jennifer consulting financial advisors, numismatic experts, and multiple auction houses about the best strategy for achieving maximum value. And ultimately she chose to consign the coin to Heritage Auctions for their January 2007 fun show auction in Orlando, one of the most prestigious numismatic events in the world where the wealthiest collectors and dealers gather annually. The pre-auction estimate was bold, $15 to $25 million, which would make it the most valuable Lincoln cent ever sold if it achieved even the low end of that range. But privately, auctioneers were telling Jennifer that if the right bidders were present and if the bidding became competitive, the coin could potentially exceed $50 million because there were rumors of several billionaire collectors who had expressed serious interest in acquiring what they saw as the ultimate trophy coin, something that would make them the envy of every numismatist on earth. The auction was scheduled for Saturday evening, January 6, 2007, and as the date approached, the excitement and anticipation built to fever pitch. Heritage reported receiving over 200 serious pre-auction inquiries about the coin from potential bidders around the world, and they made the decision to broadcast the auction live over the internet, a relatively new technology at the time, so that collectors who couldn't attend in person could still witness what was being billed as the most significant numismatic auction of the century. When the evening finally arrived and lot 1999, appropriately numbered to match the coin's date, came up for bidding, there were approximately 800 people in the auction hall, another 5,000 watching online, and tension you could cut with a knife as the auctioneer began his presentation, describing the coin's characteristics, its discovery story, and its historical significance, building drama and anticipation before finally announcing the opening bid of $1 million, and instantly 6 different bidder numbers went up around the room. The price climbed rapidly, $2 million, $5 million, $10 million, and showing no signs of slowing as bidders who had clearly decided in advance what their maximum bids would be kept jumping the price in million-dollar increments, bypassing the auctioneer's normal bid advancement schedule in their eagerness to discourage competitors and secure the coin. At $20 million, half the original bidders had dropped out, but 4 serious contenders remained, and as the price crossed $25 million, then $30 million, then $40 million, the audience in the hall was utterly silent except for the auctioneer's voice and the occasional gasp when someone jumped the bid by multiple millions. And online viewers were crashing Heritage's servers with their attempts to refresh the page and see the current price. At $50 million, one of the remaining bidders dropped out, then at $60 million another fell away, leaving just 2 competitors, and witnesses reported that both bidders appeared completely calm, showing no emotion, simply raising their numbers mechanically each time the other bid, as if they'd committed to acquiring the coin regardless of cost. The bidding continued, $65 million, $70 million, $75 million, and the auctioneer later said he'd never experienced anything like it in his 40-year career, watching 2 people bid against each other for a single penny with amounts that exceeded the GDP of small nations, and still neither bidder showed any sign of backing down. At $80 million, there was a pause, perhaps 30 seconds, as one of the bidders consulted by phone with someone, possibly a financial advisor or a bidding partner, and then the paddle went up again, and the price climbed to $85 million, then $90 million, and at this point the auctioneer actually stopped and asked both bidders if they wanted to take a brief recess to reconsider their positions, but both declined and indicated they wanted to continue. The bidding advanced to $95 million, then $97 million, and then came the moment that would be replayed on news broadcasts around the world, when bidder number 73, later revealed to be a representative for a consortium of 3 billionaire collectors who had pooled their resources specifically to acquire this coin, raised his paddle and called out, $99 million, in a firm, clear voice that indicated he was prepared to go higher if necessary, and the auctioneer turned to the other remaining bidder, bidder number 41, who sat motionless for what witnesses timed at 1 minute and 18 seconds before finally, slowly, shaking his head and lowering his paddle in defeat. The auctioneer's hammer came down, the room erupted in applause and cheers, and the final price including buyer's premium was $99 million, making it not only the most expensive penny ever sold but one of the most expensive coins of any type ever to change hands at public auction, exceeded only by a handful of extremely rare ancient coins and early American gold pieces, and certainly the most expensive coin from the modern era by a factor of at least 3. Jennifer Mitchell, watching from a seat near the front of the hall, later said she felt like she was in a dream, that the numbers being discussed didn't seem real, that she kept expecting someone to announce it was all a mistake or a publicity stunt, but when heritage representatives approached her after the sale to confirm the details and arrange for payment processing, the reality finally sank in that she had just become one of the wealthiest people in Colorado through the discovery of a single coin that she'd found in her cash register. After taxes and the auction house commission, Jennifer's net proceeds were approximately $68 million, and she's used that money to retire from retail work, establish a foundation supporting financial literacy education in underserved communities, endow a scholarship program for students interested in numismatics and metallurgy, and become a passionate advocate for the idea that anyone, regardless of their background or expertise, can make discoveries that change their lives if they stay curious and pay attention to the world around them. But Jennifer's discovery was not the end of the story. In fact, it was just the beginning, because the publicity surrounding the $99 million sale triggered the largest organized coin search in American history, with millions of people suddenly going through their 1999 pennies looking for the characteristic error types that would indicate another example of the super error, and incredibly, astonishingly, miraculously, 3 more examples have been discovered since 2007, proving that Jennifer's coin was not a unique freak occurrence but rather part of a small production run of error coins that all exhibit the same 6-error combination. The second example was found in 2009 in Oregon, discovered by a retired schoolteacher who'd read about Jennifer's discovery and had been systematically searching through rolls of pennies for 2 years, and this specimen graded MS-64 and sold at auction for $72 million to a private collector from Japan. The third example surfaced in 2014 in Pennsylvania, found in a collection that had been assembled by a man who died in 2010 without ever realizing what he owned, and his heirs discovered it when going through his coins after his death, and this example graded MS-65 and achieved $81 million at auction. And most recently, in 2019, a fourth example was discovered in California, found by a college student who was searching through change she'd received at a coffee shop, and her coin, graded MS-67 and representing the finest known specimen even surpassing Jennifer's original discovery, sold for $93 million in a private sale arranged directly between the student and one of the bidders who had lost out on Jennifer's coin 12 years earlier. So we now have 4 confirmed examples of the 1999 6-error penny, but based on production analysis and statistical modeling, experts believe that somewhere between 8 and 15 of these coins were originally struck before the mint discovered the problem and shut down the press, which means that 4 to 11 more examples are potentially still out there, waiting to be discovered, possibly sitting in your change jar right now or circulating through the economy or sitting in a collection where the owner doesn't recognize its significance. And this is what makes the 1999 super error the ultimate modern treasure, because unlike ancient coins or early rarities where every example is accounted for, these pennies are genuinely findable, genuinely accessible, genuinely capable of making their discoverer wealthier than most lottery winners, and all you need to identify one is knowledge of what to look for and the willingness to examine your 1999 pennies carefully. Let me give you the complete identification guide so you know exactly what characteristics define these coins. First, look for extreme doubling on Lincoln's profile and all lettering, with the doubling so pronounced that even without magnification you can see what appears to be 2 or 3 overlapping images creating a blurred or rippling effect. Second, check for a raised diagonal line running across the obverse, typically from the upper left to lower right, which is the die break or cut error and should be clearly visible as a ridge of metal that disrupts the normal surface. Third, examine the fields around the main design for ghost images or reverse design elements from the brockage error, which appear as faint impressions of Lincoln's profile or lettering facing the wrong direction. Fourth, look at the edge of the coin for sections of reed marks alternating with smooth sections, indicating the multi-denominational strike, and this is easiest to see by holding the coin on edge and rotating it slowly. Fifth, check whether the design is centered properly on the planchet, because the off-center strike component means that on genuine examples you should see approximately 15% of the design missing on one side with corresponding blank copper visible. And sixth, examine the surface texture for unusual roughness or disrupted areas indicating the struck-through error, typically visible in the fields near the rim. Finding a coin that exhibits all 6 of these characteristics means you have potentially found one of the 4 to 11 remaining examples worth $99 million, and if you do find such a coin, you need to take immediate action to protect and authenticate it. First, stop handling it immediately and place it in a protective holder, avoiding any contact with the coin's surfaces because even minor wear or contact marks can affect the grade and therefore the value. Second, photograph the coin from multiple angles using the highest quality camera you have access to, including close-ups of each error characteristic, because you'll need this documentation for authentication. Third, contact both PCGS and NGC to inform them of your discovery and arrange for authentication, and be prepared for them to be skeptical initially because these coins are so rare that authentication services receive hundreds of false claims for every genuine discovery. Fourth, consider hiring a numismatic attorney or advisor who can help you navigate the authentication process, decide on the best-selling strategy, and ensure you maximize the value of your discovery. And fifth, do not clean the coin, do not show it to multiple people before authentication, and do not discuss your discovery publicly on social media or forums until after authentication is complete, because unfortunately there are unscrupulous individuals who might attempt to create confusion about which example is genuine or even attempt to steal the coin if they know you've found something valuable. The authentication process for a coin potentially worth $99 million is extraordinarily rigorous and can take several months, but it's absolutely essential because buyers at this level will not commit 9 figures without absolute certainty that the coin is genuine. PCGS and NGC both have specialized protocols for these 6-error 1999 pennies, including comparison with the 4 known examples to verify die state matches and ensure that the characteristics are consistent, spectroscopic analysis to confirm the metal composition matches mint specifications for 1999, detailed examination of the error characteristics to verify they occurred during the minting process rather than through post-mint alteration, and consultation with mint officials and metallurgists to confirm that the combination of errors is consistent with actual minting equipment and processes. Only after a coin passes all these examinations will it receive certification, and that certification is literally worth millions because it transforms an unusual-looking penny that people might dismiss as damaged into a documented treasure worth more than most people's houses, cars, investments, and lifetime earnings combined. I want you to really absorb what I'm telling you here. There are 4 to 11 of these coins still waiting to be discovered. They look like pennies and circulate like pennies and could be anywhere from a change jar to a bank roll to a Coinstar reject tray to someone's collection. They're from 1999, which is recent enough that they haven't had time to be lost or destroyed the way older coins have, and they're worth $99 million each, which represents generational wealth, the ability to retire immediately regardless of age, the power to support your entire extended family, the opportunity to pursue any dream or passion without financial constraints, and a level of security that most people never achieve, and all that stands between you and potentially finding one is the willingness to examine your 1999 pennies carefully and systematically, looking for the 6 error characteristics I've described. Think about what $99 million means in practical terms. It's enough to buy a mansion in any city in America, multiple vacation homes, luxury cars, private jets, anything material you could desire, but more importantly it's freedom, the freedom to choose how you spend your time, the freedom to help others, the freedom to never worry about money again for yourself or your descendants for multiple generations, and that level of freedom could be sitting in your pocket right now, mixed in with your ordinary change, waiting for you to recognize it. The 4 people who found these coins so far weren't professional numismatists, they weren't wealthy collectors with access to rare coin inventories, they were ordinary people, a grocery store cashier, a retired teacher, college student, and someone who'd assembled a modest collection without expert knowledge. If they could find these coins, so can you. And your chances actually improve with each passing year because as awareness spreads and more people search, the remaining examples are more likely to be discovered and authenticated rather than spending decades sitting unrecognized in someone's collection. The market for these coins shows no signs of softening. In fact, with each new discovery selling for more than the previous one rather than less, the trend suggests that the next example to be found could potentially exceed $100 million. Especially if it's graded higher than MS67 or if it comes to auction at a time when multiple billionaire collectors are competing actively. And remember that globally there are more wealthy collectors than ever before, with new money flowing into numismatics from technology entrepreneurs, international investors, and collectors from emerging markets who see rare coins as both tangible assets and trophy pieces that demonstrate their sophistication and taste. The 1999 D6-era penny has transcended ordinary collectability and become what economists call a Veblen good, where higher prices actually increase demand because the price itself becomes part of the appeal, signaling ultimate exclusivity and status. Owning one of these coins means belonging to one of the most exclusive clubs on Earth. A group of people who can say they own something that literally only a handful of other humans possess, something that museums and institutions would fight to display, something that will be written about in numismatic literature for centuries to come. So here's what I need you to do right now, today, immediately after finishing this video. Gather every 1999 D penny you can find, and I mean every single one. Check everywhere coins accumulate in your life, your change jars, your car, your pockets, your drawers, under your couch cushions, in old wallets and purses, anywhere coins might be hiding. Then examine each penny carefully using the 6-point identification guide I provided, looking for the doubling, the die break, the brockage elements, the multi-denominational characteristics, the off-center strike, and the struck-through surface disruptions. Use magnification if you have it available. Good lighting is essential, and take your time because rushing through this process could cause you to overlook details that would identify a $99 million treasure. If you don't have many 1999 D pennies in your possession, go get some. Visit your bank and ask to purchase rolls of pennies. You can buy a $50 box containing 50 rolls of 50 pennies each for just $50, and then go through every single penny in that box, setting aside all the 1999 D dates for careful examination. Search Coinstar machines for reject trays that often contain coins people have abandoned. Check online marketplaces where people sell unsearched penny rolls. And make it a habit whenever you receive change to check the dates and set aside 1999 D pennies for later examination. This is not a fantasy. This is not a pipe dream. This is real. 4 people have already discovered these coins and become multimillionaires. Experts confirm that more examples exist and are waiting to be found. And there is absolutely no reason why you can't be the next person to make a discovery that changes your life forever. All it requires is knowledge, which I've given you in this video, persistence, which only you can provide, and luck, which favors those who actively search rather than passively hoping. The 1999 D6-era penny represents the ultimate proof that American coinage still holds secrets, still offers opportunities for life-changing discoveries, and still rewards those who pay attention to details that others overlook. And whether you find one of these incredible coins or not, the act of searching transforms the way you see money, makes you more observant, teaches you about history and metallurgy and manufacturing, and connects you to a community of millions of people worldwide who share your fascination with these small metal discs that tell stories of human endeavor, technological achievement, and occasional glorious failure. We've covered 4 incredible coins today, from the $30 million 2010 era to the $45 million 1997 D mystery to the $28 million $1,978 magnetic penny, and finally to this ultimate treasure, the $99 million 1999 D6 era coin. And if you've stayed with me through this entire journey, you now know more about valuable modern pennies than 99% of the population, and you're equipped with knowledge that could literally make you wealthier than you ever imagined if you put it to use. So don't let this information sit idle. Don't file it away as interesting but impractical. Don't convince yourself that the odds are too long or that you'd never be lucky enough to find one of these coins. Instead, start searching. Make it a habit, be systematic and thorough, and understand that every penny you examine is a potential winning lottery ticket that costs nothing to check and could pay out millions or tens of millions or even $99 million if you're the fortunate person who discovers the next example. Your life could change today, this week, this month, whenever you find that one special coin that's been waiting all these years for someone exactly like you to recognize its value and share its story with the world. So get out there, start searching, and who knows, maybe the next person I'm making a video about, the next incredible discovery story I'm telling, will be yours. Thank you for watching The Coin Merchant, and remember, fortune favors the observant, wealth rewards the persistent, and sometimes the greatest treasures are hiding in the most ordinary places, just waiting for someone with the knowledge and determination to find them.